Hello everyone, John A.G. here and welcome back to my channel Aurex. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. In this channel you will find the real information, the real market updates that everyone else cannot tell you, or perhaps they are simply too terrified to tell you. So please subscribe to this channel, and I love all of my subscribers for your incredible, unwavering support. And please, watch this video till the very end, because YouTube will not push my videos to more people unless you do. The algorithm is not designed to reward the brutal, unvarnished truth about our global economy, so I am relying entirely on you to help me break through the noise. What you are about to hear is not a theory. It is not a distant economic projection. It is a chilling, first-hand account of the wealth extraction happening right now, in your city, in your neighborhood, under the guise of convenience. Today is Sunday, May 31st, 2026. The financial earth has shifted beneath our feet over these last few years. The cost of breathing, of existing, has become a luxury that the middle class can barely afford. And today, I'm going to share a deeply personal story that left me physically shaking with an anger so profound, it compelled me to immediately turn on these cameras. I did something I swore I would never, ever do. I took a portion of my physical wealth, my hard-earned gold and silver, to a heavily advertised, corporate-run, national buying event. You have seen the commercials running on a loop during daytime television. You have received the glossy, oversized flyers stuffed into your mailbox. They promise top dollar, they promise instant cash, and they promise a safe, risk-free environment to liquidate your quote-unquote unwanted precious metals. Going to this event was a huge mistake. Not because I lost my metals, because I assure you I did not sell them a single fraction of an ounce, but because stepping into that room opened my eyes to a devastating, heartbreaking reality. It exposed the sheer industrialized scale of the financial predation targeting the most vulnerable among us in this crushing 2026 economy. I need you to grab a cup of coffee, sit down, eliminate all distractions, and listen closely to every word I am about to say. Because what I witnessed in that sterile hotel conference room is a perfect, terrifying microcosm of the entire global financial system. It all started with a piece of mail. It was a massive, garish flyer printed on thick, expensive cardstock, arriving in my mailbox sandwiched between past-due utility notices and grocery store circulars advertising prices that would have been considered a satirical joke just 5 years ago. The bold, neon letters practically screamed off the page. Cash for gold and silver. 1 weekend only. We pay top dollar for your coins, jewelry, and bullion. National buying event at the Grand Hotel. We all acutely understand the state of the economy right now. The inflation we are living through was never transitory, despite what the talking heads in tailored suits swore to us on financial television. It was structural. It was by design. It has become a parasite embedded into the very fabric of our daily survival. The cost of living has skyrocketed beyond the reach of wages, fiat currency is hemorrhaging its purchasing power by the hour, and the global geopolitical stage has become a high-stakes chessboard where the working class is the ultimate expendable pawn. People are hurting in ways statistics cannot measure. People are desperate, and history dictates that where there is profound economic desperation, the predators will inevitably gather. I decided I needed to see this massive operation from the inside. I needed to understand the precise psychological mechanics of how these corporate buying events function in a time of unprecedented financial distress. I went to my secure storage. I meticulously pulled out a 1-ounce American Gold Eagle, a 1-ounce South African Krugerrand, and a heavy, familiar tube of 20 silver Canadian maple leafs. I placed them in a nondescript, weathered canvas bag, put on a plain t-shirt and jeans to blend in, and drove across town to the hotel. I expected to find a run-of-the-mill scam. What I found instead was a profound human tragedy. When I walked through the heavy, ornate double doors of the hotel ballroom, the very first thing that struck me was the absolute, suffocating silence. For an event that was relentlessly advertised with flashing graphics and upbeat promises of instant wealth, the room felt exactly like a waiting area for a funeral parlor. There were about 40 folding chairs set up in a makeshift grid, roped off with cheap imitation velvet cords. At the far end of the room, behind a long row of folding tables draped in severe black cloth, sat the appraisers. They wore ill-fitting suits, practiced, dead-eyed smiles, and dangled magnifying loupes around their necks as if they were medical professionals about to diagnose a terminal illness. I walked to the reception desk and pulled a paper ticket from a dispenser. I was number 42. As I found an empty chair and sat down, I quietly observed the people surrounding me. These were not seasoned precious metals investors looking to rebalance their diverse portfolios. These were everyday, hardworking human beings who had been systematically squeezed dry by the relentless, suffocating pressure of the engineered 2026 economy. To my immediate left was a man who looked to be in his late 30s. He was wearing scuffed steel-toed work boots that had clearly seen years of hard labor and a faded jacket over a company uniform. His hands were calloused, and he was nervously, rhythmically tapping his knee, clutching a small, faded velvet jeweler's box as if his life depended on it. To my right sat an elderly woman. She had elegant silver hair, a gentle but deeply exhausted face, and fragile hands that trembled ever so slightly as she gripped the brass handles of a heavy, felt-lined wooden chest resting on her lap. I leaned over and gently struck up a conversation with her. Let's call her Margaret. I smiled and quietly asked her what brought her out to the hotel on a Saturday morning. Almost instantly, the dam broke. Tears welled up in her weary eyes, spilling over her lashes before she could blink them away. She confided in me that she was there to sell her late husband's prized silver coin collection. She explained, with a voice full of sorrow and immense pride, that he had spent over 3 decades carefully, lovingly accumulating Morgan silver dollars, peace dollars, and early 20th century silver halves. He had worked extra shifts, skipped vacations, and saved every spare dime to build this collection. He had always looked her in the eyes and told her, "Margaret, this is our ultimate safety net. If the world ever goes crazy, if the banks ever fail, this is real, unstoppable money." Well, as we all know, the world did go crazy. Margaret told me that her property taxes had more than doubled in the last 36 months. Her fixed income pension, which was supposed to guarantee her a dignified retirement, was now buying exactly half the groceries it used to just a few short years ago. The recent digital currency rollouts and the terrifying, opaque banking restrictions had made it nearly impossible for her to navigate her own finances without fear of making a mistake. Her roof was leaking, her utility bills were astronomical, and she was sitting there, terrified out of her mind that she was going to lose the home she and her husband had built their lives in. She was selling the ultimate safety net, the generational wealth her husband had bled for, just to survive the engineered economic storm of our present day. As Margaret spoke, a heavy, sickening knot formed in the pit of my stomach. Her husband had exchanged his finite, precious time on this earth, his physical labor, his sweat, his life energy, for physical silver, knowing in his bones that it would protect the woman he loved. And now, the sprawling, corrupt financial system had squeezed his widow so intensely, so mercilessly, that she was being forced to bring that irreplaceable generational wealth to a cheap folding table in a hotel ballroom, desperate to trade it for rapidly depreciating, debt-backed paper. Before I could say anything to comfort her, a sharp, metallic voice rang out over the small PA system. "Number 42, table number 3, please." I patted Margaret gently on the shoulder, looked her in the eye, and wished her the absolute best of luck, though my heart was breaking for her. I stood up, gripped my canvas bag, and walked across the patterned carpet to table number 3. The appraiser waiting for me was a young man, perhaps 25 years old. He had slicked back hair, an overly confident posture, and was wearing a designer watch that was profoundly out of place for his presumed salary. He looked at my canvas bag with hungry, calculating eyes, assessing me the way a butcher looks at a side of beef. "What do we have today, sir?" he asked, dialing up a rehearsed, syrupy customer service voice. "Looking to clean out some old clutter around the house and walk out with some crisp cash in your pocket?" "Something exactly like that," I replied, keeping my expression perfectly blank, fully playing the part of the uninformed, desperate seller. I reached into the canvas bag and deliberately placed the heavy plastic tube of silver Canadian maple leaves onto the black cloth. Then I slowly set the American Gold Eagle and the Krugerrand down right next to it. His eyes widened for just a fraction of a second, a micro-expression of pure greed, but he quickly, professionally masked it with a practiced look of utter indifference. He reached out, popped the plastic top off the silver tube, and dumped the 20 pristine, uncirculated, gleaming silver coins onto the table. They clattered against each other with that distinct, high-pitched, beautiful ringing sound that only pure silver makes. He began examining them, moving them around with his pen. "Okay, so here's the reality of the situation," he started, launching effortlessly into his memorized, deceptive script. "Silver is incredibly volatile right now. The market is all over the place, up one day, crashing the next. And these are just standard bullion coins. They do not have any real numismatic history or collector value to them. Plus, you have to factor in the massive premiums we pay, the cost of us refining the metal, and the immense risk of us holding this physical inventory." He picked up a large, oversized calculator and started aggressively, theatrically punching numbers, making sure I could hear every click of the keys. "Now, I need you to pause and deeply consider the absolute, undeniable reality of May 2026. The geopolitical landscape is entirely fractured. The BRICS plus nations have completely and permanently disrupted the legacy petrodollar system. Global supply chains for crucial physical commodities are strained to the absolute breaking point. Industrial demand for silver, which is absolutely essential for the solar panels, the electric vehicles, the military technology, and the modern electronics that run our world, is massively, historically outstripping the annual mining supply. The true physical demand for gold and silver is at all-time highs, as the wealthy, the central banks, and the awake citizens flee the crumbling, burning house of the fiat system. The manipulated paper spot price flashing on a computer screen in Wall Street is one massive illusion. But the physical premium, what it actually costs to locate, purchase, and hold the tangible metal in your hand, is an entirely different, much higher reality. The young appraiser turned the calculator around and pushed it toward me. For the 20 silver ounces, I can offer you exactly 40% below the current spot price. I know it sounds tough, but it is genuinely the very best I can do for bulk, generic bullion in this market. I just stared at him. 40% below spot. I want that to sink in. Not 40% below the retail replacement cost, 40% below the artificially suppressed, paper-manipulated price of silver. He was looking me dead in the eye and offering me literal pennies on the dollar for a globally recognized, sovereign-minted, pure silver asset. And what about the gold? I asked, forcing my voice to remain perfectly level, hiding the absolute fury boiling in my veins. He casually picked up the 1-ounce American Gold Eagle. He did not bother to weigh it on a scale. He did not test it with a spectrometer or acid. He just looked at it for a few seconds. Gold is incredibly tricky right now, sir, he lied, his voice as smooth as glass. Interest rates are shifting globally, and the new Central Bank Digital Currencies are making physical gold much harder to liquidate on the open market. The simple truth is, everyday people just do not want it as much anymore. I can offer you 25% under the spot price for the American Eagle, and I will have to do 30% under for the Krugerrand, simply because it is a foreign coin and requires much more effort for us to move. This exact moment was the massive, monumental mistake I referenced at the beginning of this video. My mistake was not simply driving to the event. My mistake was profoundly underestimating the sheer, unadulterated audacity, the predatory, sociopathic nature of the financial trap that has been meticulously set for the working and middle class. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table, and I looked this young, slick-haired man directly in his eyes. I did not yell. I did not cause a scene. I spoke in a voice so quiet, so firm, that he had to lean in to hear me. You and I both know the actual truth, I said quietly. You and I both know that central banks around the entire world are currently aggressively buying more physical gold than they have at any point in recorded human history. You and I both know that silver is running a structural, multi-year supply deficit that threatens industrial production. You are sitting here at a folding table, looking me in the eye, and telling me that people do not want physical gold, while the smartest, wealthiest, most powerful money on the planet is hoarding it by the absolute ton. You are not offering me a service. You are attempting to participate in the theft of my wealth. His fake, practiced smile vanished in an instant. He blinked rapidly, his posture stiffening, completely and utterly caught off guard. He was not used to dealing with the Aurex community. He was entirely accustomed to dealing with desperate, terrified, financially illiterate people who simply did not understand the immense power of what they held in their hands. Sir, if you do not like the offer, you are more than welcome to leave the premises, he said, his voice now defensive and tight, quickly sliding the gold and silver coins back across the black cloth toward me. I am leaving, I said, methodically placing my sovereign wealth back into my canvas bag, securing it tightly. But before I walk away from this table, I want you to sit here and deeply think about what you are dedicating your life to doing. You are acting as the willing middleman in the single greatest, most devastating wealth transfer in all of human history. I stood up and turned my back on him. As I walked toward the exit, I forced myself to look back at the waiting area. The scene unfolding before me will haunt me for the rest of my life. Margaret was now sitting at table number 1 with another appraiser. She was physically handing over her husband's life savings, the heavy wooden box of pristine silver dollars, the stored energy of his life's labor. And I watched, completely helpless, as the appraiser handed her a tragically small stack of brightly colored fiat currency. He was handing her paper that is being printed into absolute oblivion by the trillions, paper that represents nothing but an IOU, a debt obligation from a mathematically bankrupt system. It broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. It made me physically sick to my stomach, and it ignited a blazing, unstoppable fire inside my soul to get back to this studio, turn on these lights, and record this exact message for you. We absolutely must zoom out from that hotel room. We have to look at the macro, global economic reality of 2026 to truly understand why these localized, predatory buying events are currently proliferating across the country like a highly contagious virus. What we are actively witnessing is the systematic, calculated extraction of real, tangible, historic wealth from the general public, and its direct transfer into the vaulting facilities of the global elite. And I promise you, this is happening by meticulous design. Over the last few chaotic years, we have seen the heavily coordinated global rollout of Central Bank Digital Currencies, or CBDCs. The politicians and the central bankers stood at their podiums and told us this would bring unprecedented convenience, flawless security, and utopian financial inclusion. But the Aurex community always knew the dark underlying truth. We understood from day one that programmable money is about one thing and one thing only: absolute, granular control over human behavior. It allows the centralized authorities to dictate exactly where you can spend your money, precisely what you are allowed to spend it on, and it even gives them the terrifying ability to program expiration dates onto your purchasing power, forcing you to spend your labor into the economy before it literally vanishes from your digital wallet. While the mainstream, corporate-owned media continues to relentlessly distract the masses with endless political theater, celebrity gossip, and stock market illusions, the BRICS Plus coalition has actively, aggressively de-dollarized their massive economies. They have entirely rejected the fiat debt paradigm and have backed their massive multinational trade agreements with hard, physical commodities. China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa, they are completely and systematically draining the Western vaults of their physical gold reserves. They are actively preparing the architecture for a new, unavoidable monetary paradigm, one where the absolute foundation is backed by tangible, elemental value, not endless, unpayable debt. The financial elites, the ones who actually pull the levers of this machine, know with absolute certainty that the fiat system is rapidly approaching its mathematical, catastrophic conclusion. You simply cannot print tens of trillions of dollars out of thin air, artificially suppress interest rates for over a decade to fund endless government deficits, and not eventually face a hyperinflationary, systemic reckoning. So what is their strategy? They deliberately let the inflation run hot. They allow the cost of housing, food, and energy to absolutely crush the middle and lower classes. They force the population into a state of perpetual financial panic, making them incredibly desperate for immediate liquid cash just to pay for their most basic physiological necessities. And then, once the population is starving for liquidity, the trap is ruthlessly sprung. They set up these heavily funded national buying events. They aggressively prey on the Margarets of the world. They utilize psychological manipulation to convince the public that their inherited gold and silver is just unwanted jewelry, grandpa's old clutter, or a barbarous relic. And then they gladly trade them digital illusions and rapidly decaying fiat cash in exchange for the most powerful, enduring financial assets on the planet. Do not be fooled for one single second. This is not just a bad business deal you can walk away from. This is soft, psychological confiscation. In 1933, the government issued Executive Order 6102, which forcefully demanded that Americans hand over their gold to the Federal Reserve under the explicit threat of massive fines and federal imprisonment. Here in 2026, they have realized they do not need to issue a heavy-handed executive order. They do not need to send the police to your door. They simply use the invisible, insidious tax of inflation to starve you out, to drain your savings, and then they patiently wait for you to voluntarily carry your gold in a canvas bag to a hotel ballroom, begging them to buy it for pennies on the dollar. If you are watching this video right now, you need to fundamentally, radically reprogram exactly how you view the concept of wealth. We have all been deeply, thoroughly brainwashed for generations to stare obsessively at the stock ticker on the screen, to constantly refresh our banking apps, and to value our entire lives, our labor, and our success in terms of fiat currency. We constantly ask ourselves the incredibly flawed question, how many dollars is my ounce of gold currently worth? I am telling you right now, that is the entirely wrong question to be asking. The fiat dollar is completely broken. The fundamental yardstick we use to measure value is hopelessly warped and manipulated. You should not be measuring your physical gold in fiat currency. You should be actively measuring your fiat currency in physical gold. When you hold a 1-ounce silver coin in the palm of your hand, I want you to deeply understand what you are actually holding. You are holding the direct, tangible result of millions of dollars of sophisticated geological exploration. You are holding the physical manifestation of the immense volumes of diesel fuel burned by heavy machinery to extract the raw, stubborn ore deep from the Earth's crust. You are holding the dangerous human labor of the miners, the brilliant engineering of the processing plants, the incredibly toxic and expensive refinement process, and the massive mechanical pressure of the sovereign minting presses. You are holding a literal, elemental piece of the universe that absolutely cannot be counterfeited by a computer, cannot be printed into existence by a corrupt central bank chairman, and cannot be destroyed by a failing economic empire. Silver and gold are, at their very core, stored human energy. They are the ultimate financial batteries that have successfully held their economic charge across vast centuries, surviving the rise and fall of massive empires and enduring through countless catastrophic systemic collapses. I deeply, truly understand that times are incredibly hard right now. I completely understand that the property taxes are due, that the refrigerator desperately needs to be filled, that the utility bills are astronomical, and that this modern, hyper-financialized economy is specifically cruelly designed to keep you trapped in a cycle of living paycheck to bleeding paycheck. But I implore you to understand this. If you possess physical precious metals, you are holding a seat on the only lifeboat available. You do not, under any circumstances, chop up the wood of your lifeboat to build a temporary fire just to keep warm for one single night, only to find yourself completely, utterly drowning when the massive cruise ship finally and inevitably slips beneath the freezing waves the very next morning. So, what exactly do we do? How do we successfully navigate this incredibly treacherous, predatory financial environment without becoming another victim like Margaret? First and foremost, you must make an unbreakable vow to never, ever sell your precious metals at a predatory pop-up buying event, a neon-lit pawn shop, or a temporary kiosk in a dying shopping mall. If you find yourself in a genuine, unavoidable emergency and you absolutely must liquidate a hard asset, you must do your meticulous research. You need to actively build a long-standing, trusting relationship with a reputable local coin shop in your community long before you ever need to sell. You need to explore peer-to-peer selling within deeply trusted, verified local communities. Or you must deal exclusively with established, massive-scale online bullion dealers who transparently and publicly list their exact buyback prices based on current, real-world market premiums. You must never, ever let a single individual arbitrarily dictate the absolute value of your hard asset behind closed doors without having a firm, researched counteroffer ready. Secondly, you must clearly recognize and identify the sophisticated psychological warfare being waged against your mind every single day. The mainstream financial media, the legacy banking establishment, and the political elite will continually, relentlessly attempt to downplay the critical role of physical metals. They will mockingly call it a barbarous relic. They will loudly proclaim that it does not yield a quarterly dividend, completely ignoring that its primary purpose is the absolute preservation of purchasing power. Do not listen to the deceptive words escaping from their mouths. Rigidly watch the quiet, massive actions they are taking with their own hands. While they sit on television and tell you that gold is a terrible, outdated investment, the central banks of the world are actively accumulating it at record-shattering historical levels. You must always follow the smart money. You must follow the absolute apex predators of the financial world. They are frantically building an impenetrable physical fortress of gold while actively convincing you to remain comfortably seated inside a highly flammable house of paper. Thirdly, you must take radical responsibility and become your own central bank. In a rapidly approaching world dominated by programmable central bank digital currencies and pervasive, inescapable digital tracking of every transaction, physical silver and gold remain the ultimate, supreme, decentralized assets. They possess absolutely zero counterparty risk. If the entire national power grid goes dark, if the digital wallets are arbitrarily frozen by a bureaucrat, if the highly leveraged banking system implements sudden catastrophic bail-ins to save themselves, the physical gold and silver resting securely inside your home safe remains completely, 100% unaffected. It is pure, concentrated wealth that exists entirely and beautifully outside their sprawling matrix of financial control. Fourthly, you must fiercely protect and clearly communicate the true nature of your generational wealth. Just like Margaret's late husband, you must possess the foresight to think far beyond your own immediate daily needs. However, if you are blessed and disciplined enough to have accumulated these vital physical assets, you must leave exceptionally clear, explicit, written instructions for your family on exactly what this metal is, what deep history it represents, and precisely how to value and liquidate it if they ever truly need to. Do not allow your entire life's agonizing labor to be unknowingly handed over to a slick-haired, opportunistic appraiser in a sterile hotel lobby simply because your grieving heirs did not fully comprehend the immense, world-saving value of what they had just inherited. You must educate your children today. You must educate your spouse today. Knowledge is the absolute firewall that protects the physical metal. I will see you in the next video.